Okay, now that we have divided by fractions, we are going to start using mixed numbers. And just like when we do mixed numbers with multiplication, it's the same thing, it just requires an extra step. So for these two problems, I have find 2 2/3 divided by 2/3, and then find 3 5/6 divided by 1 2/3. It still means the same thing. For this first problem, it still means how many 2/3 can I fit into 2 2/3. And the way we solve this is we need to make this 2 2/3 a fraction. So first we're going to do that. How we do that is we make it an improper fraction. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8, keep my denominator. So I have 8/3 divided by, and 2/3 is already a fraction, so we're good to go. So now we're back to where we just were in 2.2, where we're going to multiply the reciprocal. So I keep 8/3 and I make 2/3 into 3/2 because I'm making its reciprocal. And when I do that, I have 8 times 3, which is 24, and 3 times 2, which is 6. Well, this is a really good one because I'm doing 24 divided by 6. And again, we don't leave these as improper fractions. We do make them mixed numbers. Or sometimes if we're lucky, they come out as whole numbers like this one. So 24 divided by 6, I know is 4. But if I didn't know that off the top of my head, I can say, okay, how many 6s go into 24? I have 6, 12, 18, 24. So that would be 4. So my answer for 2 2/3 divided by 2/3 would be 4, meaning I can fit 4 2/3 inside 2 2/3. This next one, 3 5/6 divided by 1 2/3, this is the type of problem we have to do the most amount of work with because I have to convert both of those numbers into improper fractions. So there are more steps, which means there's more room for error. There's more places we can make a mistake, which is why we need to be really careful and double check our work. So 3 5/6, to make that an improper fraction, I'm going to do 6 times 3, which is 18, plus 5, which would be 23. So I have 23 over 6. And then I'm going to divide. Sorry, I did not mean to do that. Give me a second. There we go. I'm going to divide that by 1 2/3, but I also need to make that an improper fraction. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5 over 3. Whenever I do this, I am going to multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to keep 23 over 6, and then multiply. The reciprocal of 5/3 would be 3/5. And here's a place where we can do the trick I taught you guys about in class, or if you're a virtual kiddo, I showed you on Zoom. But what we can do is we can look at opposite corners. So we can look at 23 and 5, and we can also look at 6 and 3. And we can see if those opposite corners, if those numbers have any factors in common, so that we don't have to multiply huge numbers unless we have to, unless we can't do this. So 23 and 5, I know that those don't have any factors in common besides 1, so that won't help me. But I do know that 6 and 3 do. 6 and 3 both have the common factor of 3 because 3 goes into 3 and 3 goes into 6. So if I were to rewrite this and make it a little bit easier on myself, I can say 3 divided by 3 is 1 and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So then I end up with 23 over 2 times 1 over 5, and it's just a little bit less work for me. So then I have 23 times 1, which is 23, and 2 times 5, which is 10. So I have 23 over 10. 10 goes into 23 2 times with 3 left over. I'm going to end up with 2 3/10. Now, if I didn't cross simplify these, or some people call it cross reduction, something like that. If I didn't do that, I would end up with the same answer. I would have just had bigger numbers and had to do a little bit more work. But as long as you're comfortable doing that trick, then you should be good to go on here. If not, just go ahead and multiply straight across 23 times 3 and 6 times 5, and you'll be good and get the same answer as well.